Welcome to the Bullpen Mafia podcast. I am Javi Salas, joined today, as always, by Steven Peterson, coming live from Boston, Mass. And in the studio with me, Eric Todorov. Guys, good to be back in the studio. Good to be back with you, Petey. Crazy weekend. I know, Petey, you took in some college basketball, man. You are a big UConn fan for everything we hear down here. Supporting the UConn, just steamrolling through the competition.
He's baseball's college women's basketball liaison.
So, Petey, tell us about your weekend, bro.
All right, so just real quick, got to go for work there, brought a couple customers in, had a good time. Honestly, boys, probably the first college basketball game I've watched since I was at URI, got like 10, 15 years ago, whatever the hell it was. Let me tell you my biggest takeaway. Number one, I mean, that the center from UConn, 7'3", I mean, that guy absolutely dominates, man. They went on a 9-0 run to start the game. They took him out. Once they got rid of the bigs, man, and that game started to become whatever. Gets to 23-23, they go on a 30-0 run. I don't know who's touching them or if anybody will come close. Purdue's got that Eddie kid, 7'3", 7'4", whatever. That's the only chance that they have in the tournament is somebody slowing down that big from UConn. But again, I love the atmosphere. I'm a big game atmosphere guy. I need that. I was craving it. Danny Hurley, the UConn coach, are you shitting me?
Are you booking the flight to Phoenix? It sounds like you're all in.
Boys, the blood pressure on the head coach from Phoenix, he's on medication or he's getting checked out after every game. I've never seen anybody like that up and down the sidelines. He coached at URI before he went to UConn. The energy is contagious. Those boys, I don't see anybody touching them. But yeah, what a blast, boys! What a blast!
Come for the baseball stuff and get Stephen Billis.
Yeah,
college basketball.
I admittedly thought you were going to talk UConn women's hoops. I didn't even realize you went to the men's game.
The men's game, yeah, dude.
It was good.
I don't know.
Oh man, I
don't know what he's doing up there in Boston.
I know. You guys look tan though. You know I'm not in the sun. I'll tell you that. You guys are looking good. It must be nice to be in the warmth.
It's starting to heat up down here. And speaking of heating up, opening day, Marlins opening day. Quite the experience. Unfortunately, the roof was not open last Thursday for Marlins opening day, and I think for the first time, Javi, they've gone open roof 4 games in a row. Has not helped the results on the field, but I quickly wanted to touch on opening day. I've been going with my dad for, it seems like, my entire life now. I can't think of an opening day that I haven't been to. And I got to admit, fellas, second year in a row, I came to tears during the national anthem, just kind of being a 32-year-old guy now, been doing this for 2 decades with my pops. And the older he's getting, the older I'm getting. I was a bit overwhelmed with emotion. I know, Javi, you grew up going with your father to Marlins opening days. And I just got to say, I took it back, and I whipped out my iPhone and I jotted down some notes just about how I was feeling to be in that moment with him. Just it was a shot of nostalgia straight into my arm, straight into my veins, and I couldn't believe it. The older I get, the softer I think I'm getting. But to be brought to tears at a baseball game, just standing next to my father, seems ridiculous. But I don't think there's any other sport like baseball that can do that for you in that setting. There's nothing like opening day baseball. And just a shout out to my dad for introducing myself to baseball. I'm sure by no means is my experience being introduced to baseball exclusive to me. I think most Miami kids probably grew up getting pulled out of school early to go up to Dolphin Stadium, Pro Play, or whatever it was called, on a yearly basis. But again, really, despite the Marlins being absolutely atrocious this weekend, it was a special day, and I'm never going to take it for granted.
That's awesome, Petey, man. We didn't have that on the bingo card to get all emotional after your UConn rant, dude. I mean, holy cow! Talk about a roller coaster of emotions we just went on. But yeah, dude. Obviously, I think Major League Baseball kind of evokes that nostalgia out of people. Who watch the games, you realize how much tradition. I mean, we had some Duke friends of mine who were at the parade in Cincinnati, leading up to the game, and it looks super cool. I mean, every town seems to have their own little traditions, and it's cool to see. And I think baseball's kind of leaning into it, right? I think it's we haven't seen this much heightened intensity and fandom in professional baseball in a long time. So it's cool to see.
And I thought it was great that nearly all the games started around the same time. So it kind of had that March Madness feel, even being around March Madness with so many games happening at the same time. I think to your point, it elevates the sport. It gets people talking, and gets people excited.
Awesome. I would hug you if I was in studio right now, brother. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm feeling better now, but
get us back on track too. Take us home.
Yeah. So the team that embarrassed the Marlins opening weekend, I think each of us has the Pittsburgh Pirates as a team that kind of caught us by surprise, and that the NL Central as a whole, I think, had a pretty impressive weekend. And two of our three teams that kind of surprised us, the Brewers and the Pirates, pretty impressive stuff, making the NL East look like much weaker competition.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously being in South Florida, we caught a lot of the Marlins and Pirates series, and the Pirates, obviously there was some anticipation for their season. They got a lot of prospects, a lot of young guys. I think that's sort of where they sit in terms of professional, the Major League Baseball scene. I don't think anyone is anticipating the Pirates to be World Series champs or anything like that, but they certainly kicked the Marlins' butts 4 games in a row.
Well, they're 5-0 now, as about 45 minutes ago. So
breaking news.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about the NL Central. We're talking giving the Brewers some love. The Tigers went 3-0 this weekend. So, I mean, the central teams, AL, NL Central, man,
and the both divisions are wide open.
Right. Who knows what happens with those teams? I think both divisions, 85 wins might win them.
And
kind of running away.
And Petey, you got that Brew Crew sweater on. Why don't you give us a recap of their impressive weekend in Queens?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, me and Javi got a little biased there. Obviously, we love the boys. We love the, the fact that the hometown. Well, I can't say hometown team because I feel like you guys got a lot of Miami love in there. But it's always nice to see the Crew rip off a series sweep like that.
I really don't think anyone saw that coming. New manager, Devin Williams is out. A bunch of new faces. Jackson Churio, what a debut! If it wasn't for Shohei and people talking about Jackson Holiday in AAA, talk about under the radar superstar budding for your Brew Crew, for your hometown team. Forget the Red Sox.
Yeah, no, man, Red Sox are coming up in a little bit, man. I'm back on the bandwagon, baby.
Really, I mean, yeah, dude. You talk about the Brewers, right? And we, Devin being out, Devin Williams being out, and Devin's a good friend of the program. I'm sure we'll have him on here soon, but. They seemingly have all these arms that just come out of nowhere, and a bunch of no-name guys. And by end of September, you're realizing, holy cow, how does this guy have 35 saves? It seems like everybody that ends up. It's kind of like the Sean McVay coaching tree. Like everyone who's a Brewers bullpen arm at some point or another becomes a relief pitcher of the year, relief pitcher of the month. I mean, they've had dominated that award for the last 5 or 6 years. So, I mean. Obviously, we've talked about 3 teams now, 3 really important, starts to their season. Obviously, it's early, 4 or 5 games out of 162, but they definitely impressed us. I think teams that underwhelmed us, we're going to stay right at home with the Florida Marlins, 0-4.
Miami Marlins.
Excuse me. I'm wearing a Florida Marlins hat right now, but yes, the Miami Marlins. And then the Houston Astros. I mean, talk about underwhelming start to a big series against the Yankees.
They haven't won a game at Minute Maid in probably – what 7 it's going back 7, 8, 9 games because they didn't win a home game against the Rangers in the ALCS.
Right.
So some bad juju's going on in Houston right now. I think we don't have to dive into we know what they did kind of thing, but
what did they do, Toad?
cheat
something with the barrel, Toad, something with the bang of the barrel.
Toad was banging the desk. We got to move on to the next segment.
But actually I do want to throw in the Yankees into the mix of teams that did impress.
I intentionally left them out because I said they might be a little overrated on our last show. So they certainly proved me wrong.
Also, and you admitted to being slightly biased. And folks, after listening to our first pilot episode, you enlightened a lot of people with your Yankee fandom. People were thrown off, confused, had to come to your defense a handful of times in group chats. But regardless, I didn't catch the Yankees games individually. I didn't watch any of the games except for the last one. Our boy John Birdie, and just that ninth inning as a whole for the Yankees, I think is a glimpse into what they're capable of. Strong bullpen, an offense that can come from behind, and defense.
And they're going to take Petey's boys in Boston to the woodshed every time they go to Fenway this year.
You haven't given me a chance to talk about my Red Sox piece. Can we just stop? Javi, it did hurt me a little bit seeing that hat on you last week. So, Toad, I'm glad you and the boys were giving him a little bit in the group chat there, because
unbelievable. Being a Yankees fan or any New York team in South Florida is a mortal sin.
Right. What do you like, Duke too, Javi?
No,
his boys lost yesterday. Oh, what a shame.
Who else? Yeah. Michigan football, Javi, too.
Warriors, Duke.
Cowboys. But I think this is an easy transition to our next segment, Around the Horn. And sure enough, on first base, Juan Soto, Javi, you are now claiming the Yankees bias is coming on very strongly this evening.
Hey, I know where the big media markets are, man. We're trying to get this podcast off the ground. We got to pander to the right folks. But yeah, we're going to use this Around the Horn segment every time we open up a podcast. Each one of us is kind of trying to rip off not a hot take, but something that, it's on our mind. And I think for me personally, I think we got a glimpse into what Juan Soto really is. A guy who, came up in the national system, obviously was thrust into the national stage in a World Series at 19, 20 years old. Then goes away for a couple years in San Diego, and he's on a star-studded team. Probably doesn't get the attention he deserves.
No, and playing in San Diego, I think dulled his star power a little bit.
And then you see what Juan Soto's capable of this weekend, hitting over 500, throws a guy out at the plate on opening day to win the game. Yesterday gets a game-winning hit in the bottom of the ninth inning. I mean, what can't he do? And I mean, I'm just worried about how big of a check the Yankees are going to have to write here pretty soon if they want to keep him in the Bronx. I mean, talk about a guy who really solidified himself, if not the best, one of the top 3 players in Major League Baseball.
What I loved out of Soto the most this weekend was his fire.
Yeah.
How excited he was to have a game-winning hit opening weekend series. He wasn't part of that Yankees team that had to deal with the Astros cheating scandal. And you might have thought that he's been a Yankee lifer. So I thought it was refreshing to see a superstar like that so engaged in that moment on a new team. And outside of Aaron Judge, who's to say he can't be the new leader on that team? And people forget, I mean, he is a World Series champion, but he's been in the league like 8 years already, which is absolutely mind-blowing.
And he's going to go up to Fenway and beat the Petey's Red
Sox. Hey, I mean, I'll tell you what, the only guy I'm caring about in that outfield right now is Verdugo, who also had himself a pretty good weekend, boys. I mean, he looked right at home. Besides the big red beard like I rocked in 2016 that he used to have when he was here, I mean, he's clean shaven now. I mean, he looked good too, boys.
But there's an outfielder who had a nice debut for the Red Sox this weekend too in Seattle.
Go ahead. Talk about
him. No, that's all you, bro. You want to talk about the Red Sox? You take it, Petey. No, hell no.
Hey, well, actually, Toad, I should go. I mean, I was impressed by 2 guys this weekend. You talking more Tyler O'Neill or Rafaela? Which one were you talking about?
I was thinking about the most jacked player in all of baseball.
God, dude. I mean, that guy, man. So, first of all, I'm watching the game on Thursday night, right? I stayed up as long as I could. They got the whole stat right when the game started. He's got 4 opening day home runs, right? 5 would be the record. So, like, I'm flying through the DraftKings sportsbook here and taking a look like I'm like, all right, so like,
baby, DraftKings, if you're listening,
like there's got to be something out here for this guy to homer 5 straight opening days. Ends up doing it. I think it was the 8th inning. He looked great. I mean, honestly, boys, the thing, I think I was on record here last time talking about the Orioles and the AL East, and again, Ravi. I mean, Javi, certainly very similar to you, right? I'm catching heat from the guys. How dare you say that? You're a Sox guy at heart, Boston guy. The Orioles last place finishers my entire life, but here we go. So, I was impressed, man. Trevor Story comes back, right? He's healthy. Hasn't really been healthy to start an open day. Hasn't been healthy at all. I think he played 46 games altogether last year. He looks awesome, right? Devers homers second at bat game 1. Doesn't play games 2 or 3, comes back in game 4. They're ripping it up offensively again. I mean, that guy mashes. Rafael in center field, man, looks like somebody that where you had Duvall last year, you had a little bit of Kike, you had a lot of guys sort of moving around in that center field spot. Rafael is a great young prospect, looks awesome, looks comfortable out there. And boys, let's talk about the starting pitching. I got this here.
Go off, Petey.
You boys ready?
Go off right now.
4 games this weekend, the starters, okay? 4 runs over 22 innings. That's a 1.64 ERA. All 4 of these guys made it through at least 5. Pivetta and Cutter Crawford. And then you got Brian Bello and you got Garrett Whitlock getting through 5. Didn't get into the 6, but probably could if you're pushing them. This is mid-season, late in the season, those guys are going. But one thing I found interesting, I saw an article today in the Boston Herald was saying that Andrew Bailey, the new pitching coach, his philosophy, and Harvey, I think you're going to love this too, because this really nothing pisses me off more than when I get a young kid in for a lesson or a young kid that I'm working with. I say, hey, what do you throw? Oh, I throw a 4-seam, 2-seam, changeup, splitter, slider, curveball, and I got a cutter, right? The guy goes out and throws a bullpen. He throws a 35-pitch bullpen. He throws 3 strikes, right? The fastball and the cutter, the cutter and the slider move the exact same, and his curveball looks like just a exaggerated slider. Andrew Bailey's philosophy with these guys now is, hey, let's throw the pitches that are going to be most effective for us, right? Hey, you got a curveball, you got a slider, you have this or that. What's better? Is your curveball better or is your slider better? Okay, maybe we throw that curveball 30% of the time. You mix in that slider 10 to 15, but we're not calling it and throwing it like you did last year because it wasn't an effective pitch for you. I love that philosophy. I hate more than anything when guys just think that they have a pitch and they throw it 1 out of 15 for a strike, right, during a single game, and you keep going back to it and you throw it in clutch situations. To me, it's garbage. It's a waste of time. Rely on the pitches that you have trust in and the pitches that are good for you, and you're going to have success like these guys did this weekend.
I couldn't agree more with you, Petey. I think we've seen so much the evolution of the game, and I blame it on some of the pitchers. We've seen some nasty guys come through, right? Like I remember the first we were growing up, Daisuke Matsuzaka, the catcher didn't have enough fingers to call the signs, right? For him, he had so many different pitches. So, right. Kids now are just enamored with swords and filthy pitches, and you start following Pitching Ninja, and you think you can do that kind of stuff. But
everyone's trying to end up on Pitching Ninja,
right. So that's awesome that Bailey's doing that in Boston. I think they got a lot of young guys to work with, and he can it's a blank canvas over there, right?
Arguably there's no expectations for the Red Sox.
And they do have a former Miami Hurricane as their manager, so they do have the right guy leading the ship down there in Alex Cora, Petey. So. I'll give Boston that.
Not coming for the Sox-Yankee series, but
I'm enjoying genuinely. I'm enjoying this feistiness between the two of you because I think rivalries are back in baseball. This weekend we got a little glimpse of playoff baseball in the first weekend of the season, and in a competitive sports market right now. This time of the year, we got March Madness, NBA and NHL hockey playoff hunts are starting to ramp up. As we know, NFL is being talked about ad nauseum. Or I can't say ad nauseum anymore. I was told that was obnoxious, but the NFL is being talked about at all times. I think some of the chippiness and some of the scraps that we saw this weekend are amazing for baseball. Make some headlines that aren't a translator's betting or banging on a trash can or pitchers are being told to throw too hard. Baseball's back.
Back, Toad.
Players are pissed. People are angry. And I freaking loved it. Relief pitchers shoving base runners, benches clearing over hard slides into second. Throwback baseball. In your face,
just a couple hockey guys, huh? Petey and Toad, just bringing puck to the.
Let's go. Enough of this. Brushing guys back, and I don't want to hit him. Let me throw it behind him. No, screw it. Let's go after each other's necks. Let's get the people talking. Let's get the people what they want. Petey, you know this. The best part of a hockey game, it's the fighting. Sure, I want my team to win, but if I can see a knockout. Forget everything else.
Toad, let me ask you a question though on that topic. And Javi, I think you're going to have a very similar opinion to me in this. I don't understand hitting Hoskins in the 8th inning. Like,
let's transition to our next segment where this is a Petey. This is beautiful. You laid it up for us.
Look at us evolving.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Look at us,
Petey. We act like we know what we're doing, right? So our next segment, we're gonna call it fair or foul, right? We're gonna bring up a topic and we are going to discuss what we think about this topic. Is it fair or is it foul? And today, Petey, you led us right into the segue. Rhys Hoskins sliding through second base, and I use sliding through very loosely. He did, in my opinion, did nothing wrong, but he slides through second base. McNeil's trying to turn a double play. Granted, it's a low throw. McNeil goes down to pick it, and not pick it, but it's down at his shins. Doesn't get to turn the double play. Hoskins sort of slides into him, and it was not a very aggressive slide. I thought
by no means was it
Hoskins,
overly aggressive.
Yeah, he's not a burner, so he wasn't coming in at all that high of a speed, and he slides through the bag while holding the bag, and McNeil starts pointing at him while he's on the ground. It was kind of like not to call it a punk move, but it was like one of those, like, dude, if you really wanted some action and some smoke, you could have gotten it.
Yeah,
right?
but also Hoskins didn't start drawing back until he was in the comfort of his own dugout.
Yeah, look, tomato, but I thought it was one of those things where, like,
we don't need more turtling, okay?
So Petey, that's a perfect. What question were you going to ask? Go on.
So, going back to the slide in general, right, boys? I agree. It wasn't an egregious slide. I think McNeil got upset because if you watch the replay, right, he obviously gets spiked a little bit in that right leg. There's no way that felt good. And if you watch that left knee, it does buckle. I think it was one of those where, like, in his head, like, right away, you guys know how it is. It's like something happens to you like that, and immediately he's fired up. He probably knows in his head, hey man, like, that wasn't like a takeout slide. Like, that guy wasn't trying to injure me per se, but, like, he just spiked me in the foot. He buckled the knee. I'm pissed off. Like, you're standing up, you're standing over the guy. But Toad, I agree with you in the sense of this. Boys, what do we got? Boys, what do we got here? The fireworks all fired up here?
Did you turn your Mac on, dude? What'd you do?
No, that wasn't me. I didn't do that.
What did I do?
Go on. That was cool. Whatever that was, Petey.
Did something happen?
Hey,
okay.
Javi, my thing is, so that happens in the game. McNeil's fired up. McNeil's a big name on your team. Like Hoskins is obviously he's new with the Brew crew. He wants to get the boys fired up. Toad, I agree with you. He's back in the dugout. He didn't do anything there. It almost looked like he was hurt for a little bit because of how long he stayed on the ground. Didn't jar at all until he's past the foul.
I think he was like soaking in the, like, trying to figure out like what happened exactly and why McNeil was so upset. And I don't think it clicked for him until he, unfortunately walked 100 feet. And I'm sure McNeil had some very friendly terminology and was calling him his best friend and all that stuff. But again, I'm not going to complain about it because even if it wasn't that big of a slide, I think it's good that these guys are fired up so early in the season. It also helps that Hoskins was on the Phillies.
Yeah, that's true.
The Mets and Phillies don't like each other. So I'm sure there's some of that rivalry from the NL East is boiling over into a random Saturday game in Citi Field between two teams who have no history and limited beef with each other. But, now we have something to look forward to when the Mets are going to American Insurance Life Field, whatever it's called.
The big keg.
Keg. Sorry.
I mean, look, my thing is, like, look, I never played middle infield, so I don't know. And to your point, Peter, that was a good point in terms of, maybe it was one of those instances, I think, where McNeil thought I could have gotten hurt if this was a little bit, more aggressive and more egregious. I just think, those slides we grew up seeing those, right? Like, you just see second and shortstops just getting, taken out. And that's kind of been eradicated from the game. There's been some bad injuries. I remember, the Chase Utley incident, and that was, against former Met player. So there's definitely history there. My issue with the whole thing was, like, the Mets were pissed off. They let Rhys Hoskins show up on Sunday and go 3 for 3, and he pumps one out to left field, sprinting around the bases, has 4 RBIs, and then in the 7th inning, you go and hit him. Like, dude, that was weak. I thought that was a punk move by that pitcher. And look, man, I'm not an advocate for hitting guys. Like, I know that there's a time and place you have to protect your players. And in that situation, I don't know if the Mets dugout had called for it, or if, it was one of those things that maybe the instances earlier in the game didn't allow for it. But if we get into the 8th inning of a ball game, like I mentioned, this guy already just pumped one out to left field. You got 4 RBIs. Now you're going to hit him and throw behind him. Like, I just thought that was kind of a whack move by the pitcher. I know he got suspended 4 games. He's going to appeal it, but I mean, look, man, the game is too difficult, and guys are throwing harder than ever. If you're missing up around, it was behind his back, and I didn't think it was up by the head. I thought it was, by his scaps, shoulder area. But
dude, it was so far. It was so far behind him. I saw it live.
Yeah.
The Mets broadcast crew thought it was so bad of a pitch.
Yeah.
That they thought, like, man, maybe this was just an accident.
That I think that was a little hometown cooking by the Mets booth, right? But
yeah, Keith and the boys, I think 2 minutes later, like, oh, it was definitely off.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you're throwing projectiles at these guys, and like, again, there is a target area. It's one of those unwritten rules in baseball. There's a time and place to hit guys, and there is a specific spot to go after dudes. You don't go up high because.
Well, I have an interesting question for both of you. When does the conversation happen with either the head coach or your teammates as a pitcher, both of you? Are you deciding on your own? I'm going to take this into my own hands and back up my boys, or is there a literal conversation? Someone coming up to you, coach or teammate, you got to go after this guy. How does that unfold in the dugout?
I'll let you take that one, Petey.
Well, I was gonna say, Toad, I never threw hard enough, so I'll pass that on to Javi. Yeah, no, there's and again, I think it's like everybody's aware of certain situations when things like that either need to happen or the game needs to police itself. Whether it's I think it's kind of, if it's communicated to us as pitchers, you just, like Javi said, you're picking your spots. You kind of know where, where and when to do it and when not to, which is why, like Javi said, it's very interesting that you let Hoskins go 3 for 3 and look more comfortable than he ever has up at the plate, throwing literally at his head in the 8th inning. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, to your point, when the situation calls for it or the game calls for it, or there's maybe something that happened earlier in the game or the time before where, either on the bench or in the bullpen, like, hey, we're not going to stand for that. Our guys aren't going to stand for that. And we're gonna show you that we're not gonna stand for that. And then whatever happens from there, you hope, like a lot of times in these situations, right? The guy, they were talking about it in the game. You hit the guy, you move on. Like that's the game of baseball. That's the old school thing. He gets hit, you move on. But obviously shit like this, if it boils over all season long, like you said, Toad, it's going to make for some good TV. Maybe another 30-second home run trot by Hoskins like he did last year in Philly.
But watching it live, Yohan Ramirez didn't even seem like.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he throws a pitch to the backstop. There's a guy on first base, and he runs towards home plate. Like, there's no one going from third to home. So, then he takes 2 steps at Hoskins. So it was one of those things, man. Like, look, and PD, you touched on it perfectly in the sense where, like, baseball's a unique game in a sense where, these games are series, right? So, like, if you're in a series and your guys have been hit 4 times and you haven't hit anybody on their end, like, the other team's probably due for one. And, kind of both coaches know what's going on, both managers, both lineups. And it's usually you go after one of their bigger guys. You don't go after a guy who doesn't really, you know what I mean? You never go after the pitcher. And pitchers don't hit anymore. But, just in that sense. And it's kind of like, we always talk about the unwritten rules. Who the hell has the unwritten rules of baseball? But I keep saying, man, it's too dangerous of a game to be throwing up high. Like, if this was really something that bothered the Mets and bothered McNeil, it would have been taken care of in the first inning, first couple innings, his first at bat. Don't let him get comfortable. He's already 3 for 3. Now you throw behind his head. Like, I just thought it was whack, man. And look, I've been in some situations where.
So is it fair or is it foul?
It's foul, dude. I thought it was foul. And I've been in some situations where I've had to pitch inside. And look, I was the kind of guy that I probably led the ACC in hit batters my freshman year, throwing 30 innings because I naturally had a running fastball. I pitched inside just because that's the way I was kind of taught, and not because I thought I was a badass or anything, just because my ball ran inside and I luckily got, to run it up on righties, and it was an advantage for me. But I never wanted to hit guys intentionally. If the situation called for it, I wanted to make sure that I did it in a place that respected my teammates and also respected the person in the batter's box. Like I said, man, it's too dangerous of a game, especially with guys throwing high velocity. You never want to injure somebody or, for better or for worse, end their career, with an errant pitch.
Or breaking a guy's wrist
and
by
their
accident.
Season. Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Foul.
So final segment of episode 2, we're going to spend a little time here getting to know Petey, the guy behind the bullpen superstar, the self-proclaimed soft throwing lefty from MA.
Yep.
What are we rolling with the name here? Locker room talk. I'm digging it.
Story time, locker room talk. I mean, we're sort of teasing this segment out. We're gonna as a group, we're gonna attempt to have someone on as much as we possibly can, and use this segment to interview whether it's former players, current players, guys in our network and our web. But today we're going to use it to get to know Petey a little bit better. So Petey, first of all, man, tell us a little about your prep career. Tell us about your college career, how you ended up with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, so I went to St. John's Prep High School in Danvers, Mass. 2006 grad from there. Went to Marist College out of high school, which is in Poughkeepsie, New York. Spent 2 years there. Transferred to the University of Rhode Island for what would have been my junior year. At that time, it was the first year that they had put back into play the transfer Division I to Division I. You had to sit out. So I sat out what would have been my junior year there. Trained with the team, did everything you could with the team, didn't play. Played summer ball that year, went in, ended up having a great summer, get to the playoffs of that summer, playoff game, bang, Tommy John surgery, takes me out what would have been my entire senior year, that year, which was 2010. Took about a year rehab for that, got back into fall ball, got back into the season, had a decent fifth year there as a senior, and then signed with the Brewers as an undrafted free agent in 2011. Which was awesome. I mean, for me, always been my dream to play professional baseball, always my dream to get to the big leagues. But I think going through some of that stuff later on in my college career, certainly put a little bit of a halt on that. I think it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about how I train. It taught me a lot of, just as who I am as a person and kind of what I had to go through in 2010 and 2011 to get back to, good enough shape and good enough throwing wise to get a chance at the next level. So, very brief sort of explanation of how we got there, but, obviously 2011 was a dream come true, being able to sign. So.
And were you always a bullpen guy, Petey, or at some points in your career were you starting? Were you the closer? Well, where did you find yourself most of the time?
Yeah, obviously high school and college being a starter. When I got into pro ball, I never started a game in pro ball, which is kind of crazy because as Javi will tell you, like when you play that many games, like shit happens a lot of times where some guy, you got to start a warming up and he's puking in the outfield. You got to start going down with something early on. It's like, sometimes they just grab a reliever and, hey, we'll figure it out from here. But never started, honestly, to like being in the bullpen. I think once I got to pro ball, like, once you're in the bullpen and once you're kind of like, once you figure out your role and how to pitch and what it takes to warm up and what's your routine before you go in the game. Once you find that and once you get comfortable with that, like, I don't know. I loved obviously being a starter when I was younger, but I feel like I think you got the personality to be a bullpen guy. Yeah, right? Like I gotta literally shoot the shit and like make sure nobody's paying attention for like the first 6 or 7 innings, and fuck around and do everything we can, but watch the game. And then all of a sudden, when you're in the game, you got to lock in and be the guy. So yes, you're right.
Were you a seeds or a bubblegum guy?
Honestly, bubblegum guy, if there was enough people walking or running by the areas where I was doing
gum bombs, dude. Gum bombs are you end up with some gnarly gum bombs in Petey's bullpen, bro.
Yeah, like I would be the guy that was hopefully filling up your shoes with gum. But if we were in a place that was secluded and it was just the boys hanging out, I'm enjoying the seeds.
Petey, let's go back a second, and I think this will be an interesting topic. Can you walk us through what undrafted free agent looks like from your perspective? How did those conversations go? How did you end up, or how quick was the turnaround from the end of your college season to ending up on a Brewers roster?
Yeah, so we there was probably from the end of our season to the draft that year, I think that was back when it was in early June, was probably about week and a half, 2 weeks. My college coach had talked to me a little bit and said, hey, there's a chance, obviously get some people calling, we're filling out some stuff. I thought I had a good enough season to at least, get a look. Maybe it was late. I wasn't expecting anything crazy. I mean, at that point I'm trying to think. I think I was 23 years old at that point, right? So obviously extremely old in baseball terms, especially for somebody that's going to pop right into rookie ball or low A. So Yeah, just kind of, I remember watching the draft at my dad's office, for 3 days. I think it was at that time, there was 50 rounds, and watching the names go by and kind of just, obviously praying I got a shot, but also realizing as time went on and there was not a lot of conversations and not a lot of phone calls that, it probably wasn't going to happen. But that almost like it pisses you off and it motivates you more than anything else, I think, in that case, because I knew I could still play. I knew I was getting stronger than ever. I was almost at that point, I was almost a year and a half, 2 full years out of Tommy John, so I felt like I was gonna be better when I came back than I ever was before. So still very motivated. Got a call, I think, from my college coach had called me about 2 days after the draft, I think it was, at that point, and said, "Hey, the Red Sox are going to call you this afternoon," which was awesome. Obviously, that's a dream come true. But in the hour in between when he said they're going to call you in a couple hours, the Brewers ended up calling me Brian Sankey, who, as crazy as this is, boys, I just saw him tonight at my high school baseball game.
No way.
He's with the Atlanta Braves now. My son was there. He got to meet him too. Hopefully, a dream come true would be to have him sign him someday too. But yeah, I got to talk to him. Brian Sankey calls me and says, "Hey, straight up, how would you like to be a Milwaukee Brewer?" And at that point, I didn't give a shit who was calling, where I was going. Like, yes, absolutely. Ended up flying down to Arizona, that next day. So yeah, about 2 or 3 days after the actual draft was over, not a lot of communication amongst teams. My coach, a couple independent teams, couple of different routes. But like I said, I knew what I was capable of. I knew how I felt. I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep grinding. So just happy it happened.
That's so cool. Petey, what, you talk about, the quick turnaround, right? And I remember I get drafted. I'm on a plane to, Helena, Montana, 24, 48 hours after I get drafted. So what was that first minor league moment like? What was the first thing that sort of, hit you right in the face? You're like, holy crap, this is this is a whole different world out here.
Yeah, I think I was like, shit, I'm old. Like, and like, you know what I mean? Like, even being 23, like some of those guys, you know how it is, Hobby. Like a lot of everybody that goes to Arizona after the draft or after they sign as a free agent, whatever it is, like these are high school kids, these are college kids. A lot of them are, you're anywhere from 18 to, obviously me being 23. So being an older guy, I think just getting down there to Arizona for the first 2 days, kind of being physicals and, getting out there and throwing and realizing the talent, just some of the guys that you're going to be competing against or you're going to be playing with. Obviously going out to Arizona is a completely different world for me coming up here from Boston. It's, it's 105 degrees.
You got to work on the tan right away, Petey.
Honestly, Tommy, you say like, what was your welcome to the friggin' minor leagues moment? How about like stepping outside into the friggin' oven? Like where the hell am I playing rookie ball in Arizona at 23 years old, coming out of 5 years of college? No, but I think just, kind of being able to get down there, put on that jersey. I remember, it's just every time I take them out. Obviously I'm not pitching anymore, but I just remember like it took me a little while. It took me 2 or 3 appearances a lot of times to just kind of get out there and get comfortable, especially when you're in a new space. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, again, I think it was the Angels, my first appearance. Just you feel like you're throwing harder in those type of stadiums. You get the juices flowing, but yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, I would say first experience, welcome to it. Like, hey, you're 23 years old. You got some grays coming in your beard. This kid's 18 years old and he's throwing 105 from the Dominican. Yeah. You throw 88 and you're from Boston, kid. Hopefully you can compete.
I think they're drinking different water in the DR than they are in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah. Damn right they are, man. The Kangen water, right, Tommy?
The Kangen water, baby. Balance your pH. Petey, let's transition a little bit. Obviously, you spent some time in the minor leagues, made it all the way up to AAA. What was the moment where you felt closest? I guess everybody in their minor league career kind of has moments where they're pitching really well. They think that, maybe there's an opportunity for me. I know, when you get to AA, you certainly feel like you're close, right? You feel the eyes of the organization certainly on you. You're playing against other teams' top prospects. What were some of the highlights for you in your career, and what do you think were the biggest takeaways? As you look back now, you've been out of baseball a couple of years. What were some of the things you were most proud of?
Obviously, like you talk about getting to getting to AA, getting a chance in AAA there at the end of my last year in 2016. I would say the thing I'm most proud of is kind of grinding it out for 3 straight years.
Yeah.
IA, man. You know what I mean? Like it's like, you know how it is. It's not easy. Especially, down there in Florida, and to kind of, anytime you're at a level for longer than you feel like you should be, or, you feel like, you're watching guys around you getting the call, and, you feel like you should be there. It's hard, and it takes a toll on you a lot of times. But I would say, for me, we had, Joe A-Rod was an incredible manager. Xavi, Dewey, the guys that I had as pitching coaches down there at the time, just like continuing to help me work on my craft. And they never really let you kind of have a day off there, right? Like for me, it's like, hey, I'm in high A. I've been here for a long time, but I'm still around, right? Like there's something I'm doing, or there's something that the organization sees that's ultimately keeping me around and keeping me in the picture. So, to continue to grind through that, ultimately to get to 2016 after 3 full seasons in high A, get to double A, be around a lot of the guys that we're friends with now that are in the big leagues that are having a lot of success, and being able to compete there. I think at the time when I had been, called up to AAA there, I had led all the AA in appearances. I think I had 52 appearances. I had made the Southern League All-Star team. Just a crazy whirlwind year where I felt like I was pitching every single game. Just out there, just grinding it out, taking the ball, good or bad, and just competing and trying to take as much advantage of the opportunity of being AA as I could. And then all of a sudden get the call up to AAA in August. At that point, Javi, it's crazy because, and I know you know this feeling, but, I'm 20, what was I at that time? I think I was 28 years old, right? So I'm 28 years old. I had just spent almost a full season in AA. I get to AAA, and it's like, dude, it's now or never, right? Like guys are all stars in the big leagues now at 23, 24. I am 28, like just thinking I'm going to get a shot here. And I did. I mean, obviously in my head, I'm telling myself like, hey man, this is, you keep putting it together, like you've kind of earned it, sort of thing. And I look back now, because obviously I got released that next spring training, but I look back now and I sort of realize, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as the pod goes on, but the game's changing a lot now. We were on that fine line of when the game was starting to make the switch of where it was. Guys like me that we're bullpen guys, we're glue guys, we're guys that competed. It meant something to certain people in the organization, but it wasn't necessarily going to take you to the top. And I think that's kind of where my career was. You get to spring training at 29 years old after a good last season. And, I guess they probably look at it at that point and say, hey, thank you for everything. It was a hell of a run, which it was, man. I have absolutely no regrets. I think I gave the game and my career every single thing that I possibly could. But yeah, I mean, to watch it now through my son's eyes, man, I like told you want to talk about getting emotional around the game.
Look at that. We've had a full circle moment.
Yeah. I think, like being able now to watch my son play, and I'll tell you, man, I almost get more enjoyment and excitement out of watching him play than I did when I was playing. And believe me, I am way too emotionally invested in it sometimes. I feel like I'm competing sometimes, but I'll tell you that, watching him.
Petey, as long as you don't fight an umpire at a little league game, you'll be all right, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Javi, I appreciate you kind of bringing that up. And yeah, it was a lot of how it was, man. A lot of the boys too, the locker room, like the guys that we had around there, man, we were really close. We were tight. Yeah, we were competing. Yeah, everybody was trying to get to the same place, but it felt like a brotherhood. It is a brotherhood. And again, I wouldn't change anything that happened to me out there.
I think that sums it up perfectly, man. Petey, we're glad to have you on our side, man. I know
Yeah.
that you're going to be a wealth of information. I'm glad that, the listeners are going to get to know you a little bit better. And we're going to do this with Toad and myself as well, just so whoever's out there, whoever wants to, be part of this bullpen mafia can get to know us really well. Because I think that's one of the coolest part of the sport, right? Is you just mentioned it. You get to know the boys, you get to know their families, you kind of
and the absolute grind and sacrifice,
right?
Guys like you and Petey put in just for an opportunity,
right? And look, and I'll give one more, Petey anecdote. I certainly looked up to him. I remember I got drafted by the Brewers, and I show up, and I spent my first year in Brevard County, and I was really tight with Brandon Woodruff, and I remember Petey just being one of the salt of the earth guys, man, one of the greatest dudes that we were ever around, and it was never a dull moment. I remember we used to stretch in Brevard County, and we had an academic advisor at UM, and she always used to tell us, you got to bring the freaking energy. And that was our thing, right? It was like, there's no one in the stands. It's hot as hell. It's humid as hell. There's a rain delay today. But, Petey was one of those guys that always brought the energy and definitely, set an example for what a glue guy, what the bullpen mafia stands for. So we're glad we got Petey on our side, man.
So far, bringing the energy here too, Petey.
Bringing the freaking energy, Petey. I just can't wait for the Yankees to curb stomp the Boston Red Sox.
Javi, I'm bringing you up for that series. I'm sick of the coming up. And you better be in full Yankees gear too. I want you to get in the whole wrap. I want everything. I want you the full experience.
Oh man, that's good stuff. I think that's about it. Toad, closing thoughts.
Man, I'm just excited. I think after the opening weekend of baseball, there's going to be a lot to talk about this year. If the rest of the season is anything like the first 4 or 5 games here, BPM, the bullpen mafia, BPM is going to be in a great spot, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming episodes and the rest of the season.
So you heard it here first. Baseball's back.
Baseball's back.
Baseball's back. All right, guys. Thanks so much, Petey. Till next time. Thank you, Toad.
Peace.
Peace.
See you guys.